Bowe Bergdahl was definitely the story of the week. You know, the story of how he lived in captivity for 5 years and was swapped by the White House for 5 Taliban offenders. Yeah, that's the story of the week, but the story of the century is being observed today. Today, June 6th, is the 70th anniversary of D-Day. Now, it's interesting because I think actually we would do well to understand the story of the week through the lens of the story of the century. Over a bunch of conversations this week, I keep experiencing the same thing. That people tend to think about the Bergdahl story, like most of our responses to most of the news we consume, in ways that is a kind of Rorschach test, telling them and us more about the person who holds the opinion than the thing they hold the opinion about. In the case of Bowe Bergdahl, that means that so often, if people are pro the Afghanistan war, they tend to be anti the Bowe Bergdahl deal, quickly branding him a possible traitor and probable deserter and therefore not worth the trade. If people define themselves fundamentally as anti the Afghanistan war, they tend to be pro Bowe Bergdahl and the deal, saying that this was fundamentally an act of humanity and it needed to happen, and the war was a mistake to begin with, so we shouldn't have been put in that position. Now, I have a feeling that if we could go back to D-Day, we could break out of that useless dichotomy, which actually won't help us understand anything better, and just use one man's tragic life and possible crimes as a way to thump our own tradition and whatever we think about the war anyway. D-Day was both a horrible and wonderful event, and it was both of those at the same time. Horrible in that more than 9,000 Allied troops perished really in a matter of hours. And wonderful in that it began to change the course of the world for good, for greater freedom, for greater safety, for greater decency. Can we actually hold those competing emotions and analyses together, especially when we have the gift of some distance? Can we think about, when it comes to Bowe Bergdahl, the need for both mercy and justice? Can we imagine that the fundamental need to bring home a U.S. citizen, regardless of what he's done, is sacred, and the need to hold him accountable, or at least figure out what he may need to be held accountable for, is also sacred, and one doesn't come at the expense of the other? Actually, the case of Bowe Bergdahl, the story of this week, when viewed through the experience of holding on to D-Day as both a wonderful and terrible day, becomes a case for thinking about America at its best, a culture in which we appreciate the need for both compassion and accountability, not one at the expense of the other, but both together, practiced fearlessly wherever they may lead us.